6:02, and I call this meeting to order. Dr. Salazar, do we have somebody for the pledge?
Yes, sir, Mr. Garza, members of the board. This evening we have Mr. Padilla standing ready at the lectern to introduce. He's here to introduce us to one of his students, who will then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Padilla.
Mr. Garza, members of the board, Dr. Salazar. This is Jody Montes. She's an honor student at Los Cuates Middle School. She's been named to our elite top 10 students, both her 6th and 7th grade year, and is on her way in her 8th grade year. She's a member of our Los Cuates Honor Band, plays oboe. She's taken on the challenge of learning percussion. In 7th grade, she earned a chair at the Region 28 All-Region Band, and this year she earned an alternate position in the same band. Her future plans are to attend Texas A&M Kingsville to study architecture and hopefully be a proud member of their Javelina band. She enjoys listening to music, playing volleyball, as well as baking and cooking. She also sings for her church, and she is the daughter of Joe and Ida Montes, and she has a sister, Alexandria Montes, who's a junior at Los Fresnos High School.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, if you'd rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. Will the parents or grandparents of our student please stand up and be recognized? Thank you so much. Mr. Trevino, roll call, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Mr. Leonel Garza.
Present.
Ms. Sandra Garcia.
Present.
I'm here. Mr. Ruben Trevino. Mr. Martin Castillo is not with us tonight. Mr. Ray Farias. Mr. Jesus Amaya is also not with us tonight. Ms. Leticia Quintero.
Present.
Dr. Gonzalo Salazar. Ms. Elizabeth Neely.
Thank you, sir. We'll go to item 5, district presentations, school board recognition, planting the seeds of success. Dr. Salazar.
Mr. Garza and members of the board, members of the audience, January is School Board Recognition Month, a time when we pause to celebrate, to acknowledge the contributions of our elected officials in our community. And to do so this evening, we have invited some students. So parents, let me take a moment to thank you for coming out on this dreary, cool evening, and once again sharing your children with us. We are going to go reverse in protocol, and we'll begin with Olmito Elementary and Rancho Verde Elementary. No? I'm being told no. I'll turn it over to the kids. That always works.
Good evening, Mr. Garza, members of the board, and Dr. Salazar. My name is Mira Rodriguez, and I am a 10th grade student at Los Fresnos United. January is School Board Recognition Month, and this evening we would like to take some time to express our gratitude for your time and dedication to the students of Los Fresnos CISD. With your support and leadership, our students are able to receive an A+ education. Tonight, one student from each campus is here to offer a small token of appreciation for all you do for the students, staff, and community of Los Fresnos. We present to you Isabella Galvan, a 5th grade student from Las Yescas Elementary, and Damian Laboy, a 6th grader from Resaca Middle School. to thank Mr. Martin Castillo for his service. He could not be here tonight, but Las Viescas and Resaca look forward to having him on their campus later this week.
Thank you all so much, and you need to work on your shyness, okay? Because you need to be a little more outgoing. Thank you.
Next we have Benjamin Gabbert, a 4th grader from Palmer Lasco, and Carolina Robledo, a 4th grader from
Hold on. Can we just have the parents stand up for those two youngsters? And we want to thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you. I'm sorry I interrupted you. You can start over, and I won't interfere. Thank you.
Next we have Benjamin Gabbert, a 4th grader from Palmer Lasco, and Carolina Robledo, a 4th grader from Laureles Elementary.
Thank you.
We would like to ask Mr. Rey Farias to come down and accept a small token of appreciation from the campuses.
Will the parents of these children please stand and be recognized?
Here from Lopez Riggins Elementary is Matthew Gomez from 5th grade and Jadalyn Cortez, a 5th grader from Villarreal Elementary School. We would like to ask Mr. Ruben Trevino to come down and accept a small token of appreciation from both campuses.
Will the parents of these children please stand and be recognized?
Next is Francisco Flores, a 4th grader from Olmito Elementary School, and Fernanda Altamirano, a 5th grader from Rancho Verde Elementary School. We would like to ask Ms. Leticia Quintero to come down and accept a small token of our appreciation.
Will the parents of these children please stand and be recognized? And also, for the record, Mr. Jesus Amaya has come. Say again? Have joined us. Good word to remember.
Here we have Doreli Boone, a 4th grader from Los Fresnos Elementary, and Victor Guzman, a 7th grader from Liberty Memorial Middle School. Now we would like to ask Ms. Sandra Garcia to come down and accept a small token of our appreciation.
Will the parents of these children please stand up and be recognized?
Now from Los Cuates Middle School is Jody Montes, an 8th grader, and Dennis Vachez, a senior from Los Fresnos High School. Mr. Leonel Garza please come down to accept a small token of our appreciation?
If we could have the parents of the students stand up to be recognized as well.
Thank you. Now joining me is Faith Perales, a fourth grader from Dora Romero Elementary. Last but not least, would Mr. Jesus Amaya please come join us to accept a small token of our appreciation?
Will the parents of these children please stand and be recognized?
We hope you enjoyed your evening. Please know that your work today may not be visible tomorrow, but that does not mean you did not leave an impression. We are thankful for each of you and the seeds you helped plant that will grow and blossom for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mrs. Stumbaugh, I didn't show up to rehearsal, so I didn't do a proper introduction. We had a wonderful master of ceremonies. Can you tell us who helped us tonight?
Well, she kind of introduced herself, but she's very quiet and shy about it. But this is Mia Rodriguez. She's a 10th grade student at Los Fresnos United. We changed the script about 2 minutes before we started, but you couldn't tell, could you? She's fabulous, right?
That it, sir? Item 6 is we're going to take a short recess at this time, so
Please join us for refreshments.
we're back. We'll go to item 7, district reports. Dr. Salazar, please.
Mr. Garza, members of the board, we present to you this month's financial reports. And before we move to items 2 and 3, I'll stop here to see if anyone has any questions on our financials. If there are no questions, then at this time I'd like to welcome Secretary Gascos, who will present report number 2 on tonight's agenda, the auditor's report and annual financial statements for the fiscal year ended August 31st, 2018. Secretary Gascos, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Carlos Gascos. Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Salazar, I'm here to present the audit report. Felicidades and welcome. I'm going to try to be brief. If you'd like, I can go into a little bit more detail with you, either at this meeting or later on, to explain the audit in a little bit more detail. But let me give you just a brief of what an audit is all about. Once a year, you're required to have a financial audit where we provide an opinion on the fairness of the financials, and we give you opinions on internal controls, whether it's on federal programs and your overall system. When we come in to do an audit, obviously you all write thousands of transactions every year. It would be very unreasonable and not feasible for us to audit every single transaction, so we randomly select transactions to audit. And basically that transaction, I've started to refer to that as a forensic audit of that particular transaction. And the reason for that is because in a forensic audit, you do a lot of detailed testing. You take that transaction from its infancy stage, which means either through a purchase order or requisition, followed by an invoice. Ultimately, it gets paid and then posted to your accounting records. So we select various transactions in various departments, and we test those. We have found that if there's a 10 or 12% or 50, whatever the percentage is of error in that particular transaction, as an example, let's say that the goods are received prior to an invoice being submitted or even a purchase order being required. That's an exception, because normally there's a trail. Normally it starts with a requisition from a department, followed by a purchase order, followed by an invoice, followed by ultimate delivery of goods or services, followed by payment, then posting. So we follow that transaction again from its infancy stage, from the time that a request is made by a department or a department head, and follow that transaction all the way through till it gets posted to the books of record. And that's where we test that. We have found in the past that if there's a 10%, 5%, whatever the percentages of error, we feel fairly comfortable that the total population is also faced with that same error margin. So if 10% of the transactions that we select have some issue with them, it doesn't have to be an erroneous or intentional error, just somebody forgot to do something, then we feel fairly comfortable that the whole population is damaged that way. And that in essence ends up with a management comment. We also test payroll. In other words, make sure that the deductions that every employee signs up for is what the district is doing. If they're claiming 3 exemptions on their W-4, that's exactly what is being withheld, and we test that. We also test for the payments. We also do inventory. We've done inventory where we go to various schools and inventory, let's say food services or whatever they have in stock. That is what an audit is about. That's how we come up with a management letter on commentary. Everything on the balance sheet that you're going to see has been tested by us to make sure that it's there. Now, the ultimate responsibility of this is you all. You all have the ultimate responsibility to make sure that if you go back and read the opinion basically says that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with all this accounting stuff, but that they're fairly stated. Not exactly stated, but they're fairly stated, which means that, as an example, you could have something that was misclassified. It maybe went to data processing when it should have gone to computer supplies. Well, the bottom line doesn't change. The expenditure is there and was there. So the financials may not be exactly as presented, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is fairly stated. Now, the opinion that we provided is known as unqualified/unmodified opinion. That in the accounting terminology is a good thing. Unmodified, unqualified is a good thing. I've been asked before, and I'm not going to mention the community, but I was asked by a board member after I went through this exercise and explaining an unqualified opinion, unmodified opinion, how that's a good thing. He asked, well, what is it that we need to do in order to get a qualified opinion? And that's not a good thing. Qualified is never good, at least in the accounting profession. Qualified means that, let's say, your financial statements, as an example, let's say that your ad valorem taxes receivable, we have no subsidiary ledger for that. In other words, there's a number there that we think is probably good, but we can't identify who those receivables are from. Or you may have rolling stock. You may have all these school buses out there, but no, you can't find 50% of them. So instead of giving you a bad opinion on everything, because everything else is right, we will give you a qualified opinion, which may say, in a nutshell, everything is fine with the exception of this. It could be ad valorem taxes. It could be rolling stock, inventory. It could be something else on the balance sheet or on the income statement that we could not, it was unauditable, but it really wasn't that material, but we have to modify the opinion because we're not sure. So that, in essence, is Accounting Auditing 101 that I wanted to present to you, since this is the first time that I've had the privilege of addressing you as a school board member. Now, there's a couple of pages that I want y'all to look at, and I'm gonna try to follow that. First one is on page 13, page 15, and page 50. And the reason that I point those out is because that, in a nutshell, is what the school board financials are all about. If you go to page 13, you're going to find a line that says unassigned fund balance. That means that fund balance that you have, about almost $25 million, is unencumbered, unassigned. It's basically net position, net profit. If you're in private enterprise, that's your equity section. That would be your retained earnings, so to speak. If you go to page 15, and this is what I want to highlight for you, is this school district, it costs this school district about $288,000 a day to open your doors. You've got about $105 million of expenditures. You divide that by 365, and that gives you the $288,000 a day that it costs this district to open. Take that up to another step, because one of the critical components of the strength of an entity is how many days of operations they have in their unassigned fund balance. You've got just slightly under 90 days. You have 89 days worth of operations. That's a very strong position to be in. To me, anything over 60 to 75 days is better than average. When you get past the 75 days, that is a lot better than average. It's really excellent. When we couple that with living on where we live in terms of being susceptible to hurricanes, natural disasters, and flooding as we've experienced over the past, it's always so important to have that number a good high number, 75 days and above. And the reason for that, as we all know, it takes sometimes a long time for FEMA to reimburse. So you've got to go out of pocket to keep your schools running, to pay your employees, to keep your rolling stock, to keep the schools open. Sometimes it takes money, and you've got all these FEMA reimbursements out there, at least in the county and the cities do. Schools do too. And it takes anywhere, well, I can tell you that there's some entities still in the valley still trying to collect Hurricane Dolly, and that was in 2008. So that's why it's important to have a very solid retained earnings, unassigned fund balance in your financials, which you do have. The unmodified opinion, as I prefaced a few minutes ago, is not an easy opinion to get. It can be lost very easily. And when that happens, if and when that happens, it affects a lot more things than just your financials. It can impact your bond rating. It can impact just the ability to go out for bonds. Your taxpayers, your voters may not want to vote on a bond issue because your financials are not in good shape. But Los Fresnos Consolidated ISD is in very good shape financially. The last page I'd like you to refer to is page 50. That's going to give one a pretty good idea as where you are in how you budget. You know, we can't control the revenues coming in. We budget revenues, and we hope everybody pays. We hope all our grants come in. We hope that all your local and intermediate sources come in, but you can't control the revenue side. That's under somebody else's control. But what you can control is your expenditure side, because that's what you cut checks out for. So if you look at page 50, you actually your actual came in higher on your budgeted revenues by about $448,000. But coupled with that, what's even more impressive is the fact that your expenditures came in at about almost $14 million less than what you budgeted. You budgeted, as an example, $110 million. You really only spent $95 million, as an example. So your expenditures came in at almost $14 million below what you budgeted. Your revenues came in about $450,000 more than what you budgeted. At the end, that's a positive, and that added to your fund balance as well. That is it in a nutshell. That's my presentation to you all. Congratulations to not only you all, but the superintendent for your leadership. And as was mentioned a few minutes ago, the school board is probably the board that's the least appreciated of all the elected positions, because it takes a lot of time to do it well. It takes a lot of reading, a lot of research, and a lot of people take it for granted as to what a school board member does. I don't. When I was secretary, I had the opportunity to visit maybe 50 school districts throughout the state. Not all of them are is nowhere near as good as Los Fresnos. And I tell you, it takes a lot of work, and congratulations to those who are willing to take the time to do it. But also thank Mr. Young and Pablo and their staff for helping us during this audit. But that's all I have. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those at this time.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. We appreciate it, and we appreciate everything you do for us.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye. And if y'all need anything, you know how to get a hold of me. All right? Thank you.
So that's all members of the board. The next report that we have is actually accompanied by a little bit of a presentation by two of our executive directors, Mr. McDonough and Mrs. Amaro Cibaja, will present the performance-based monitoring analysis system.
President Garza, members of the board, Dr. Salazar. Tonight what we're going to review is our annual PBMAS report that comes from TEA. Each year what TEA does is they issue a performance-based monitoring analysis system. And what this system does is it basically rates and tracks and monitors how school districts are doing in serving key subpopulations within your district. The 4 key subpopulations that they zero in on are listed right here: special education students, our bilingual ESL students, CTE, which stands for our career and technical education students, and the last is ESSA, which is the Every Student Succeeds Act. These are the old Title I. They used to be referred to, this part of it was the Title I, which are students that qualify as economically disadvantaged. Basically, what this system does is in each of these key subpopulations, they have up to 28 indicators in each section. And what they're doing is they're looking at different performance and compliance indicators. In each one, there can be up to 28 indicators. depending upon the different subpopulations. What they do is in each of these indicators, they then assign a rating. The best possible rating you can get in an indicator is a score of 0. The worst possible score is a 4. So it ranges. You'll see 0s, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s. So what we always tell our teachers, it's just like golf, the lower the better. So you want lots of 0s and 1s, don't want to see 3s and 4s. What they've started to do now over the past 2 years to get a final overview, and what we've put on this slide, is they basically take an average in each of the different subpopulations. So, for example, special ed, where there are 28 indicators, they then average them. In Los Fresnos, we came up in that 0 to 4 scale with a 0.6. Bilingual ESL, we're 0.8. CTE, the Career and Technical Education, a 0.3. And then in ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, we're a 0. So these are excellent scores where we're below a 1 and even a 0 in ESSA, whereas you'll see other districts that their averages could be 2s, 3s, up to a 4. And then depending on where those averages stand is where they determined your staging. The first one that I'm going to go through right now is our ESSA. Again, the ESSA indicator, this is our students that qualify as economically disadvantaged. You are going to see throughout all of the slides, we are putting comparisons to the state and the region. Whenever we get scores back, that's one of the main things that we always do. We want to see how are we performing, not just we look at our scores, and then we analyze how are we doing in comparison to the region and then in comparison to the state. So you'll see here in this first slides, in all the slides you will see Los Fresnos is the maroon bar, the region is the light blue, and the state performance is the dark blue. So in this particular, for example, in this indicator, this is STAR, grades 3 through 8, the passing rates, again, for our economically disadvantaged students. So in each of these categories, you can see where we are performing. And you can see, for example, just in this one, in math, reading, science, social studies, the district, our students in this subpopulation, okay, serving economically disadvantaged students, our students are performing above the region, above the state, in every single indicator. Only indicator you can see where we're not with this subpopulation up to the 80 is in the social studies. You're going to see throughout the presentation, social studies is our area of focus, social studies and writing. In subpopulations, those are two subject areas and a lot of subpops that we have to really keep our eye upon, and that is an area of focus for us this year. But you can see, for example, in this, every single across the board, we're outperforming the region, outperforming the state. Again, STAR EOC, and we receive 0s in every single one of those categories, the highest possible score. Again, in this is our end of course. EOC is end of course exams, which are the key STAR exams for graduation. Again, in this area, outperforming the region, outperforming the state, math, science, social studies, and ELA. These are the 5 key end of course exams that students need for graduation. Again, even in the 80 range in ELA. ELA is, of course, the most difficult EOC exam across the state. That's the one that many students, especially in subpopulations, we need to really always focus on. But again, performing very well and outperforming the region and the state across the board. This particular slide, this is ESSA migrant. So this brings it down even to an even more narrow subpopulation as they're looking at economically disadvantaged students, and then taking it down even more to our migrant population. Again, you can see we're outperforming the region and the state in math, reading, science, and writing. We are not in social studies, but I think it's important to realize that this is a very, very small subpopulation. There's actually, in this particular, if you were to dig into the numbers, there's only 7 kids. So it's that small. And you'll notice that we did receive a 1 in that area, and they have it even labeled as SA, which is special analysis, which means they had to even go back and draw upon numerous years to try to get some data together. But again, social studies is our area of focus for sub-pops this year. We've already seen a big gain just by making it an area of focus. We've seen in our first round of benchmarks that have come out some major gains in social studies. Next area is special education. Again, even with our special education students, for all students, we have high expectations in Los Fresnos, as you all know, and we set the same high expectations for our special education kids. It's a wide range of students. When you see that special ed title, it can range from students that are mainstreamed speech students or mainstreamed students with a learning disability. On the other end of the spectrum, it encompasses students that are nonverbal, students with traumatic brain injuries, autistic students. So there's a wide range that this covers with special ed. You'll see that our special ed students, again, as far as the percentages, the actual passing percentages, this is always an area that we're put a lot of emphasis on, and we work hard as far as to try to help these students as far as to succeed academically. But of course, all of these students do have challenges, and we're always working with them. So as far as the overall passing percentages, we're always still looking to increase them to get them up with our regular ed scores. But again, you can see outperforming the region, outperforming the state in every category. Again, though, two areas that we're really putting as areas of emphasis this year, even though we're outperforming the region, the state, social studies and writing. And we see that for our special ed populations, and when Ms. Amato goes into our bilingual ESL students, we see those are the two areas where we really have to focus with those particular students. But again, outperforming the region, outperforming the state across the board. This is probably one of the most important indicators that in special ed to look at, and this is the SPED year after exit. Key thing in special education is our ARD meetings. These are the meetings that occur every year where we review services. And what we always try to remind people is that ARD stands for admission, review, and then dismissal. That's the key thing that we want to get to, is hopefully to admit students, then we're working with them, hopefully giving them the skills to overcome their disabilities and work with their disabilities, and then to dismiss them. So in this particular slide, these are students that have been dismissed. They're no longer receiving any special ed support, and this is how they're performing. Again, you can see it's 100% across the board. The key thing in this is to see that we don't hold them back. We're very clear with our art committees that when we see that a student, they're ready to fly, we're going to dismiss them. We're going to release them from the program. We're not going to keep them back in order to buoy scores. This particular slide is more of a compliance issue within special ed, and what it deals with in that first line that goes across the top, the SPED Star Alt 2 participation. The Star Alt 2 is a special version of the STAR exam that is for students that have the most severe cognitive disabilities. So again, nonverbal students, traumatic brain injuries, things of that nature, and they have a special STAR exam. This is a very controversial indicator across the state amongst special ed circles, because what they're doing is they're basically putting a limit on that, whereas this is not an indicator that most people in special ed will tell you should not have any type of a limit, because the only students that can take this are students that qualify with a severe cognitive impairment. So in this, this is the only category where we have a 3. But what we have told our art committees is to continue to place students on the exam that they qualify for. We're not going to make decisions in order to influence this type of a score. We're going to place students on the test that is the correct test for them to take. The next 3 indicators are very important. These are all indicators. They're called the inclusion indicators, and what they are basically looking at is, for example, in the SPED early childhood program, age 3 to 5, and then the next one, the SPED regular ed, where they have the 80% and then the 40%. In each of those, what they're looking at is the percentage of students in special ed that are out in the mainstream. For example, in that 3 to 5 year old category, which is basically our PPCD kiddos, years ago we had a 3 in that category. We've worked very hard now to get that down to a 0. So we're really working for those kids, even if they're in a unit, that they are getting out for a percentage of the day, that they are in the mainstream. Maybe it's for 1 subject, for 2 subjects. So we're constantly making sure that at every single ARD meeting, that's the first question that should be addressed is, how much is the student receiving the opportunity to be out in the mainstream with regular ed students? And it's the same. There's an indicator to see how many of your students are out for 80% of the day, and then also how many are in for more than 40% of the day. And both of those indicators, we're at a 1, not yet at a 0, but that's still an excellent rating within special ed, and it shows that we're doing a good job in ensuring that students are having the opportunity to be out with the mainstream, with regular ed students. This one, again, SPED performance as far as our annual dropout rate, 7 through 12, grade 7 through 12. Again, we had a 0 in this particular indicator. Great rating as far as that. And then on our graduation rate, you'll see it's very close across the state and the region. You see this fluctuate every year, maybe a percentage point difference between state region. Now, Ms. Amato will go over bilingual and CPE. Any questions right now on ESSA or the special ed indicators that I just went over?
Questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay. The next program that I'm going to cover is bilingual ESL. This is the group that I work very closely with, starting with our bilingual education in grades 3 to 8. If you notice that it says grade 3 through 8, but here in our district we do bilingual education from pre-K to 5th grade. Once we go into the middle school, you're going to see our ESL. But to start off with, we have our bilingual education, grades 3 through 5th, if I could correct that for our district. This is a state slide. And you can look following the same pattern as Mr. McDonough's. Our maroon is our district, and across all subject areas, we're above the region and above the state. We still have some work to do. We know that these are English learners. These are students who are learning English, and they're performing very well. We still, that 67 in writing is something that we continue to focus on as all students as well. So very proud of our bilingual education program. We received a 0 in math, in reading, and science, and we have a 1 in our writing. Now as the ESL start grades 3 through 8, in our case it's grades 6 through 8, and if we see here are in our math, in our science, we're above the region and above the state. These are our subject areas that we know for our English learners are more hands-on. We target more in vocabulary. Now, we think of it in the bilingual program, as I explained, most of our students might exit in 5th grade. Those that are continuing the program continue in middle school, and now we're referring to them as our long-term ELLs. They've been in the program for 6 years or more, or at many times they're recent immigrants. If they're coming into our school system, it is required for them as well to test in English. There is no Spanish test. So if they're coming from Mexico, then it's required that they test in English. And we provide some English as a second language opportunities, but in May or in April when they have to test, they have to take the test just like everyone else. So we look at this in math and science, it's universal. If they bring those skills with them, then they perform very well in their math and the science. These are your long terms. They've been in the system or they're new to the program. Social studies and writing, like Mr. McDonough said, is the focus that we will continue to have. Social studies are coming in, and now they have to know U.S. history. And in writing, as we know, writing is our last skill. As in an ESL program or in a bilingual, we take the listening, the speaking is the first to acquire. Then it comes with the reading and the writing, and it's a little bit more difficult for a student to write in English when it's their second language. Then we have our limited English proficient start, end of course. These are our high school students. And we look at math, science, very high in science, very high in social studies. Those teachers that in high school are doing an excellent job in social studies. ELA, it's low, but they're outperforming the region and the state. ELA, English 2, was very difficult for our ELA, for our English learners. So it's noted there. We received a 0 in math, science, social studies, and a 2 in ELA. Now, LEP not served. These are students whose parents denied the bilingual program or the ESL program. It's part of the Language Proficiency Assessment Committee. We call them LPAC, that they must continue to monitor even those who denied the bilingual ESL program. If they denied it, we continue to work with them, and we continue to monitor. And we'll look at here, they outscored in all subject areas except social studies. Again, it's the focus, the region, and the state. So we have a 3 there in social studies. The LEP year after exit. So as one of our responsibilities as the LPAC is that once they exit the bilingual ESL program, we must monitor them for 2 years. And we call them M1s and M2s. In this case, PBMAS monitors the M1s. That's the first year after exit. So if we look here, they're doing very, very well. And it means sometimes they outperform the regular ed students, those students who exit after 1 year. Again, social studies. And I was excited to hear when we had the results back from our benchmark. It's been the focus, and we've seen some gains in our social studies test. There's another test that our bilingual ESL students have to take, and it's called TELPUS, the Texas English Language Proficiency Assessment Test. And what the TELPUS is, it's assessing the listening, the speaking, the reading, and the writing. There's 4 domains that they look into. And we receive a score, and they either have a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or advanced high in each of the 4 domains. And what they look here on PBMAS, and they're looking at those students who have a multi-year of beginner, of receiving a beginner proficiency level, meaning are they making progress? Are they going from a beginner to an intermediate, or are they continue to have a beginner status? This year, it's changed. The test has gone through many changes. Now it's online. Before, it used to be rated by the teacher, holistically rated. They would talk to the teacher. The teacher would rate their speech or how well they listen. Now they sit in front of a computer with a headset and a microphone. They listen. Depending on what the question asks, they have to listen and they have to answer. And it's rated, it's recorded. They're recorded in the computer, and it's sent over to TEA, and they rate it there. So it's become a little bit more difficult. The human part is no longer there. Now it's a student with a computer, and they're being assessed with their listening and speaking. The reading is also online now. It mirrors the rigor on that test, and the reading has increased. Now it's more into aligned with the STAR test. So that was TELPUS. And then they have another score called the TELPUS Composite. And now they take all the domains, the listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and they make a composite score. This year, and this is for those years, for these students who received a beginner and intermediate, and they've been in U.S. schools for 5 or more years. They get a composite score this year. If you notice, the performance indicator is report only. It's gone through some changes. There was no data available to analyze or to compare it to. So this school year, it was report only. It doesn't give us a performance level. And that concludes our bilingual. Now I'm going over through career technical education. And these are our students at the high school who are following a CTE pathway, who have a coherent sequence of courses. And if we look across, we have 0 in all categories, scoring very high, above the region and above the state in all of these subject areas. This is our CTE LEP. This slide now, not only is it focusing on all students that participate in CTE, this one is focused only on those students who are following the pathway and are LEP students, are English limited students. And we're ensuring this school year, in the past, we used to have 100%, very low numbers. And as we're working with the Office of Academics, we've increased the participation of English learners in the CTE program. And they're performing, they're doing well. Again, the ELA is the area that we continue. English 2 is very difficult. It's very complex, and it's the hardest skill, as I said before, for our students to be able to read, and the ELA also requires them to write. Then they look at the CTE economic disadvantage, those students who are participating and are considered economic disadvantage, performing very well in all subject areas, above the state and above the region. These are our CTE special ed students, our special ed students participating in our CTE programs, and we can see here that they are. And again, they're doing very well in math and science, social studies just quite below. We received a required improvement. So we have received a 0 because we made great improvements in social studies. So even though it's at a 60.4, they gave us a 0 because we made a great stride from the previous year. And at ELA, we have a 2. Then they look at our CTE program and the annual dropout. Those that are participating, they enrolled in school. Here we have our state target was a 2.8. At our district, we're at a 0.4, receiving a performance indicator of a 0. So we're doing very well. And in the CTE, the 4-year graduation rate, those that are graduating in 4 years and participate in CTE, the state target was an 80. Our district performance, 99.7. Excellent. And we also received a performance indicator of a 0. That takes us to the stages of intervention. Once we receive the report, the state will tell us, okay, you have your stage. There's stage 0 to stage 4. As Mr. McDonough said, we want a 0. We do not want a 4. CTE and ESSA were not staged. Bilingual ESL and special education received of a stage 1. In this case, what we need to do is work on interventions. We have to have an intervention plan. If the state were to call us tomorrow and say, I want to see your interventions, we would have to send those off. We're working very closely with our administrators. This week, we've already set some meetings where we want to review those interventions and see how we can assist them and continue to provide services for our students and with intervention. That's all I have.
Questions? Mr. Trevino?
Just a comment, not a question. When you're talking about special ed and these special populations, it's the most difficult of difficult. And so, you know, as public schools, we take on every child. You know, we can't cherry pick and say, these are the best ones, these are the ones we're going to provide services to. So you guys are doing an extremely wonderful job for these kids and stuff, and thank you for your hard work. I can recall, I guess it was maybe 3 years ago, where our special population, you know, was not where we wanted it to be, and you all instituted some strategies and done some things, and so we've gone up. I can tell from the ratings and stuff that we have gone up. I have no question in my mind that you guys will be able to get where we need to be. But again, really tough job that you're taking on, and hats off to you, and thank you and your staff for that.
Thank you so much. Anybody have any questions? Ms. Garcia.
I had a comment that I was going to make in private to the special ed team, but I'll do it here. They do a fantastic job, and it's nice to be in a meeting where we're above the state and the region consistently, not just with our regular population, but with our special pops. I was at a family function and saw a cousin who was in the special ed program. I was looking for him, and my family said, he's right there. And I was like, he has done so well and progressed so well. And I asked another relative, I'm like, I didn't even recognize him. He looks amazing. And they're like, well, you know, he started going to Los Fresnos. And he told me, oh, I love school. I really love school. So I know the parents really do appreciate everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Does anybody wish for them to go over it again? Thank you so much, y'all. Excellent presentation. We appreciate it. We're going to move on now to item 8, public audience, and I believe that no one has signed up, so we'll just go on to item 9, consent agenda. We have 6 items for consent agenda. We'll use the same protocol that we've used in the past. If anybody wishes to, at this time, to pull an item for discussion, you may do so at this time. If not, I will entertain a motion to for consent agenda items 1 through 6. Mr. Amaya?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve consent agenda as posted and as listed in items 1 through 6.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Farias. We have a motion and a second on the floor to receive consent agenda items as posted. All those in favor indicate by raising your right hand, please. It's unanimous. Item 10. Action items. Number 1, discuss and take action to approve the auditor's report and annual financial statements for the fiscal year ended August 31st, 2018. I will entertain a motion at this time. Ms. Garcia.
I move to approve the auditor's report and the annual financial statements for the fiscal year ended August 31st, 2018.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Mr. Trevino, second. Discussion. We have a motion and a second. No discuss. Discuss and take action to approve auditor's report and annual financial statements for the fiscal year ended August 31st, 2018. All those in favor indicate by raising your right hand, please. Passes unanimous. Item 2. Discuss and take action to accept substantial completion of 2018 SECO lighting upgrades. Do I have a motion? Mr. Farias. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Quintero, a second. We have a motion and a second to discuss and take action to accept potential completion of 2018 SECO lighting upgrades. Discussion. Having no discussion, we have a motion and a second on the floor, so all those in favor indicate by raising your right hand, please. Motion passes unanimous. Item 3, discuss and take action to approve the superintendent's personnel recommendations for the following positions for the 2018-2019 school year. Finance Director. Do I have a motion? Mr. Trevino.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we approve the superintendent personnel recommendations for the following positions for the 2018-2019 school year. Finance Director.
I have a motion on the floor for a recommendation to approve. Is there a second? Ms. Garcia. We have a motion to approve superintendent's personnel recommendations for the following position of 2018-2019 school year. Finance Director. Discussion. Having no discussion, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor indicate by raising your right hand, please. Unanimous. Item 11, closed session. We don't have. Oh, sorry. Would that person, if she's here, would please stand up? Thank you so much. That was my bad. My bad. And I'm glad you're here. Glad to welcome you to the family. Okay. Item 11, closed session. We don't need to go into closed session. No open session. We're at announcements. Dr. Salazar.
Mr. Garza and members of the board, tomorrow at 6 p.m. You can enjoy some basketball games. The boys play at 6, the girls play at 7:30. Both of them at Los Fresnos High School gym and against the Hannah Eagles. If you prefer to be at Leo Aguilar Stadium, you're going to experience soccer. The Lady Falcons take on the Sherryland Rattlers. Special call board meeting in this room on Monday the 21st. That begins at 6 p.m. And the Los Fresnos CISD Spelling Bee will be hosted at the Los Fresnos United Cafeteria on Saturday, January 26th at 9 a.m. We are considering a facilities committee meeting. I'll call you during the week to check your availability, but we would like to hold a facilities committee meeting before the 21st. Those are all the announcements we have at this time.
The 21st of next week? That's Monday. Mr. Farias.
Tuesday basketball? Hannah Eagles. Hannah Eagles.
Okay. Anybody else have any announcements? It's 7:30, so we're